There are people who spend their entire lives searching for the Buddha. Yet the farther they go, the farther they feel from peace. There are people who kneel until their knees ache, only to stand up with the same heavy weight still lodged in their hearts. And there are those who believe that as long as they can meet an enlightened being somewhere far away, their suffering will simply dissolve. But you know what? Suffering does not disappear because we travel far. Suffering only fades when we loosen our grip. Tonight, I will tell you the story of a man who spent nearly half his life searching for the Buddha, passing through grand temples, famous masters, sacred charms, relics, and religious festivals, only to finally understand this: the Buddha is not out there. The Buddha is within our own mind, and the more we cling, the more we suffer. Thiện Đạo was born in a riverside slum. His house was poor, with a thatched roof, leaking in the rainy season, burning hot like an oven in the dry months. His father died when he was 10. His mother, Mrs. Tu, carried baskets of cakes to the market, raising her son with thin shoulders and nights filled with coughing. Everyone in the neighborhood was poor, but Thiện Đạo poverty hurt differently. He didn't just lack money, he lacked the feeling that he deserved more. When he saw others wearing new clothes, proper shoes, eating meals full of meat, something burned in his chest. It wasn't simple jealousy. It was a bitter question: why not me? As he grew older, Thiện Đạo surpassed his peers in one thing: ambition. He believed that if he tried hard enough, life would eventually repay him. He worked as a laborer, carried goods, learned to trade. He saved, borrowed, and eventually opened a small stall in the market. In the first few years, he rose quickly. People began calling him Dao, the successful trader. With a little money, Thiện Đạo changed his tone of voice. With a little profit, his eyes changed. With a little status, the way he looked at poor people changed. But life did not follow his wishes. Thiện Đạo had a childhood friend named Vinh. Vinh was clever, quick, smooth-tongued. The two once swore they would live and die together. When Thiện Đạo expanded his stall into a small warehouse, Vinh came to him with a proposal. "You've got the capital, I've got the connections. Let's do something big. Just one shipment, change our lives." The words "change our lives" made Thiện Đạo heart race. He didn't think about risk. He only saw one thing: I must win. I must be better than them. He mortgaged his mother's land, borrowed more, poured everything into one long-distance shipment. The night before the goods were to be shipped, his mother sat by the stove, coughing softly, and said, "Whatever you do, don't put the whole house on the line." Thiện Đạo replied irritably, "Don't worry, Mom. I've calculated everything." "I've calculated everything," a sentence many people say just before life teaches them a lesson. The next morning, the truck didn't arrive. Vinh didn't arrive either. Thiện Đạo ran like a madman through every street, searching, asking, knocking on doors, receiving only shaking heads. By afternoon, someone handed him a small piece of paper. "Don't look for me." Thiện Đạo stood frozen in the middle of the market. The wind blew. People continued buying and selling. But inside his head, it was silent as a grave. That shipment was everything. His mother's land was everything. His trust was everything. He went home, looked at his mother, unable to speak. Mrs. Tu looked at him as if she understood everything, but she didn't ask. She simply sat down, poured a cup of water, and said hoarsely, "It's gone, isn't it?" Thiện Đạo collapsed. "Mom, I?" She didn't scold him, didn't cry loudly. She only sighed. The sigh of a woman who had lived long enough to know that sometimes scolding doesn't save anything. But creditors do not sigh. They came at night. They chose night because night makes people afraid. Two men stood in the yard, one holding a ledger, one holding a stick. "Where's Thiện Đạo?" Thiện Đạo stepped out, forcing his voice to stay calm. "I'm here." The man with the ledger smiled. "It's due. Where's the money?" Thiện Đạo swallowed hard. "Give me a few more days." The stick struck the ground. Thud. More days means more interest. Can you handle that? Mrs. Tu stood behind her son, hands trembling. She tugged at his shirt as if to say, "Don't argue." Thiện Đạo saw neighbors peeking through doors, some with pity, some afraid of getting involved, some simply watching. That was the deepest humiliation, being stared at like a performance. Finally, the creditor dropped a sentence. "No payment, we take the land." Mrs. Tu cried out, her voice breaking. That land was left by my husband." The man laughed. "Left behind or not, a debt is still a debt." They left, leaving behind a thick, suffocating darkness in the house. Thiện Đạo sat down, his hands opened, then clenched again, as if trying to crush something invisible. That night, for the first time, he thought, maybe I should die. But he didn't die. He resented. He resented Vin, resented life, resented fate, and resented himself for being stupid. In that resentment, a rumor reached him like a torch in the dark. There's a very powerful temple in the mountains, a famous master. Anyone who prays gets what they ask for. Thiện Đạo clung to it, not because he believed in the Buddha, but because he needed an escape from humiliation. The next morning, he packed his belongings, carefully, excessively, like someone afraid the sky might collapse. He brought money, rice, medicine, thick clothes. He forgot nothing, except to ask himself what he was truly searching for. Mrs. Tu looked at him and asked softly, "Where are you going?" Thiện Đạo replied, "I'm going up the mountain to find a master. People say it's very powerful." She was silent for a moment, then said, "Powerful or not, it still depends on your heart." Thiện Đạo snapped, "What do you know?" The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them, but he didn't apologize. His wounded ego wouldn't let him soften. He left, and the bag on his shoulder grew heavier, not from objects, but from the invisible things he carried: humiliation, resentment, fear, and the burning desire to win back. After several days, Thiện Đạo reached a town holding a massive religious festival. Crowds filled the space. Incense smoke billowed thickly. In the temple courtyard, a man in a brown robe with a shaved head stood on a platform, voice booming, "Who here is suffering? Raise your hand. Who wants to change their life? Raise your hand." A forest of hands went up. Thiện Đạo raised his hand too. The man continued, "The Buddha is compassionate, but blessings must be activated. Give much, receive much. Give little, receive little." Thiện Đạo heart pounded, because it perfectly matched what he already believed. It can be bought. He pushed forward, handed over money, and received a red string, a charm, and a promise. "Take this home, and within 3 months, your fortune will change." Holding the charm, Thiện Đạo felt lighter. Light with hope, but hope like alcohol, intoxicating at first, painful when sober. That night, he slept in the temple courtyard. He heard people whispering, "That man isn't a real monk, he's part of a gang." Thiện Đạo jolted awake, heart pounding. He ran to look, but the master and his people were gone. He stood in the courtyard, clutching the red string, letting out a dry laugh. That was the second slap, searching for the Buddha and meeting someone who sold the Buddha. Strangely, instead of waking up, Thiện Đạo clung even harder. "I'm just unlucky," he told himself. "This temple is fake. The next one will be real." The more he clung, the more he ran. On the road, he encountered the old beggar again, sitting beneath a tree. The old man wasn't begging, just gazing at the sky. The old man smiled. "I'm sitting here. You're passing by." Thiện Đạo sneered, "I got cheated at a religious festival, but it's fine. I'll find the real place." The old man asked, "What are you searching for?" "The Buddha." "And why are you searching for the Buddha?" "To end my suffering." The old man glanced at the bag. "Are you suffering because you lack or because you want more?" Thiện Đạo shouted, "I've lost everything." The old man nodded. "You've lost everything and you still suffer. So if you gain more, are you sure the suffering will end?" The question lodged like a nail. Thiện Đạo couldn't pull it out. He walked away, but the farther he went, the louder the question echoed in his mind. In another village, Thiện Đạo unexpectedly met Ngọc Liên, the woman he once loved. When they were poor, Thiện Đạo promised to marry her. But then he got busy with business, busy making money, busy changing his life. Liên waited until she was exhausted, then married someone else. Now she was another man's wife with a small child. She looked at Thiện Đạo sadly. "Where are you going?" He didn't dare say he was searching for the Buddha. He lied. "I'm traveling for business." She gave a bitter smile. "You're still the same, always leaving, never staying." The words pierced him, pain of a different kind. Not the pain of losing money, but of losing something that was once his. He looked at her child, at the ring on her hand, and bitterness rose in his chest. "If back then you had waited just a little longer." She cut him off. "Don't say if. You never stopped to see what I needed." Thiện Đạo fell silent, and in that moment, he realized his attachment wasn't just to money. It was the attachment of a man who wanted everything to go his way, even love. He left the village with a new wound. Yet he kept telling himself he was searching for the Buddha to end suffering. In truth, he was running because he couldn't bear the feeling of losing. Eventually, Thiện Đạo reached a famous grand temple. Bells rang, gates towered, crowds filled the space. Everyone believed this place was powerful. He knelt for a long time, bowed countless times, prayed earnestly. What did he ask for? To repay his debts, for Vin to face retribution, for Ngoc Lien to regret, for life to stop looking down on him. Do you see? He searched for the Buddha, but every prayer was filled with ego. The abbot met him. His voice was neither heavy nor light. What do you want the Buddha to give you? I want my suffering to end. What are you willing to give up for that? Thiện Đạo was speechless. The abbot looked at the bag. Stay here 3 days, sweep the yard, carry water, and most importantly, ask for nothing. Thiện Đạo was annoyed, but he stayed because he had gone too far to return empty-handed. The first day, he swept as if venting anger. The second day, he swept quickly just to finish. On the third day, under the Bodhi tree, he suddenly saw a leaf fall. It fell very slowly, without regret, without holding on. Thiện Đạo stood still, just for a moment. His mind ran less. But then the noise of life pulled him again. This temple isn't enough. I must go up the mountain and meet a greater master. He continued. The mountain path was dangerous. The air cold, the wind howled, the heavy bag pulled his shoulder crooked. On a slippery slope, Thiện Đạo slipped. The bag dragged him down. His head struck a rock, forehead split open, blood flowing. He lay there gasping, watching the skies spin. In that moment, he found it almost funny. He was searching for peace, yet carrying a lifetime of unrest. He tried to get up. The pain was too much. He burst into tears. No one heard, no one saw, only the forest. And for the first time, amid pain and cold, he asked a truthful question. If I meet the Buddha, what would I ask for then? Would I dare to put the bag down? He couldn't answer, because the bag was no longer just belongings. It symbolized everything he was gripping. The fear of lacking, the fear of losing, the fear of being looked down upon. At last, he reached a small hut on the mountaintop. Simple, no grand bells, no thick incense, just an old monk chopping wood. Thiện Đạo knelt, voice hoarse. Master, I am searching for the Buddha. The monk looked at him and asked, Why are you searching for the Buddha? To end my suffering. Where do you suffer? Thiện Đạo placed his hand on his chest. The monk nodded. Then why do you search outside? Thiện Đạo choked. I can't endure my life anymore. The monk pointed to the bag. Put it down. Thiện Đạo panicked. But that's everything I have. The monk asked slowly, Do you want to keep everything? Or do you want less suffering? The question echoed the beggars, echoed the abbots. But this time it landed when Thiện Đạo no longer had the strength to argue. He put the bag down. The moment it left his shoulder, he felt as if a boulder had been lifted from his chest. The monk said, Tonight, sleep without holding it. Thiện Đạo was afraid of loss, afraid of theft, afraid of lack, afraid of losing control. But he slept. Strangely, he didn't sleep deeply, yet his mind didn't run. The sound of his own breath, something he hadn't truly heard in years. In the morning, the monk was still sweeping the yard. Slowly, unhurried, unfatigued. Thiện Đạo asked her, Where is the Buddha? The monk didn't answer immediately. He set the broom down and looked at him. Did you search last night? Thiện Đạo shook his head. Then what did you see? Thiện Đạo answered honestly, I saw my fear, and then I felt light. The monk nodded. You felt light because you loosened your grip. Thiện Đạo frowned. But I have debts. I must return. I must. The monk gently interrupted. Must is a rope. It tightens from within. Thiện Đạo fell silent. The monk continued. You think the Buddha is in grand temples, relics, famous masters. But have you ever looked at this yard? Sweeping the yard is practice. Carrying water is practice. Practice is not to become someone. It is to stop being a slave to attachment. Thiện Đạo asked, So, what should I do? The monk looked straight at him. Go home. Repay your debts if you can. Apologize if needed. Start again if you still have strength. But remember, don't bring the must-win bag back with you. Thiện Đạo stood frozen. It wasn't a miracle, but it was like a nail driven into the right loose spot. He descended the mountain. This time, he carried very little. Some rice, one shirt, a small knife to cut rope. The road home was still long, but his shoulders were light. Back in the village, the creditors came again. Same voices, same stick. Where's the money? Thiện Đạo stood straight. His heart still beat fast, but he didn't tremble like before. "I don't have it yet, but I will work. I ask to pay in installments. I accept the interest, but please stop threatening my mother." The man with the ledger frowned. Perhaps he was used to seeing a frightened Thiện Đạo, not a calm one. "You think I'll listen to that?" Thiện Đạo paused for a breath. "No. I'm saying it because it's right. Whether you listen or not, that's your choice." Mrs. Tu stood behind him, eyes wet. For the first time, she saw her son no longer screaming at life, no longer biting his teeth in humiliation, but standing there as someone taking responsibility without punishing himself. Thiện Đạo worked as a laborer again, carried loads, hauled goods, as before. But this time, he no longer compared himself every day. One day, he heard that Vin had been arrested elsewhere for scamming more people. They said he was beaten, crippled. Thiện Đạo felt a flicker of satisfaction. Then he remembered the monk's words, "Don't bring the must-win bag back." He fell silent, not because he had forgiven instantly, but because he realized that indulging satisfaction would still bind him. A few days later, Thiện Đạo passed a roadside tea stall and saw a beggar sitting there. Calm eyes, the old man from before. The old man looked at him and smiled. "Have you met the Buddha yet?" Thiện Đạo didn't answer immediately. He bowed his head. The old man laughed. "Ah, then you've met him." Only then did Thiện Đạo understand. The old man was not poor in the painful way. He was poor, but not bound by attachment. Thiện Đạo went home, watching his mother carry baskets of cakes. Watching the leaking thatched roof, watching the smoky kitchen. Life was the same, but inside him, something new appeared. Space. Space to breathe. Space to see himself. One afternoon, Ngoc Lien passed by carrying her child. She looked at him and said, "You're different now." Thiện Đạo nodded. "Yes, I am. Not because I met someone, but because I stopped running." She was silent, then whispered, "If back then." Thiện Đạo shook his head and smiled. "Don't say if. If is a hook. It hooks the past and drags us into suffering." She looked at him as if she wanted to say something more, then didn't. Thiện Đạo stood watching the river. Wind blew, sunlight softened, and he suddenly understood something very simple. So simple that his former self would have laughed at it. The Buddha is not in grand temples, not in red strings, not in charms, not in promises of changing one's life. The Buddha is in the moment he pauses before anger pulls him away. In the moment he loosens his grip on having to be better than others. In the moment he takes responsibility without punishing himself. And he also understood, the more we cling, the more we suffer, because clinging is like holding fire in your hand and blaming the fire for burning you. If, listening to this story, you feel a spot inside you ache just a little, then perhaps you too are carrying a bag like Thiện Đạo, a bag of winning and losing, a bag of resentment, a bag of "I must be this way to be loved," a bag of "I must be that way to be worthy." Tonight, before you sleep, try one small thing. Put that bag down, just for one breath. You don't have to let go completely. Just set it down for one breath and see how light your heart can become. And if you want me to tell another story, just as dramatic, just as quiet, about another teaching of the Buddha, leave the word heart in the comments, so I know you are still listening.